Hello, hello. What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Collectors Store League Challenge being held in St. Peters, Missouri. My name is Leonard Craft, and I'll be your commentator for this morning. I am not sure how many rounds we'll have here today at the League Challenge, but for our first battle, we will be seeing a match between Ben S. and Billy H., and it looks like they've got Reg H on their brain still. It looks like they chose Official Rules 1. We'll need to use Official Rules 2 for the competition. So they're still getting used to it. Regulation G just recently started, so players are now able to use one restricted legendary Pokemon again. So we'll have powerful options available for both of our players. The perspectives that you're seeing here, it looks like... Yeah, okay. We do have the perspectives right. Player 1 here will be Ben, and player 2 will be Billy. So, today, Ben is running a team of Zacian-Crowned, Regieleki, Incineroar, Altaria, Rillaboom, and Iron Bundle, while Billy has a team of Calyrex-Ice Rider, Incineroar, Farigiraf, Amoonguss, Rapid-Strike Urshifu, and Pelipper. So we've got a sort of Zacian-Crowned double fake-out balance team fighting against Billy's Calyrex-Ice Rider balance team. Billy's team is pretty slow overall. Really wants to get that Trick Room up with Calyrex-Ice Rider. But it also has options with Pelipper having Tailwind and Urshifu having a Choice Scarf item. But 2 Trick Room setters on the team with Calyrex-Ice Rider and Farigiraf means that the game plan is going to be get Trick Room up if possible and go from there. Let me just check to make sure everything's live. It surely is. I'd love to see that. Okay. Yep, so as you can see here, the matchup looks, I don't know who's favored in this one. Both Incineroar look pretty good here. Although the Calyrex-Ice Rider does have the Clear Amulet item, which prevents Intimidate, Incineroar is still very nice into the Farigiraf, Amoonguss, and the opposing Incineroar, so I imagine that Ben is very eager to bring their Incineroar. It is Assault Vest on the Incineroar. In fact, both Incineroar are holding the Assault Vest item. Ben's Incineroar has the moves Flare Blitz, Knock Off, Fake Out, and Snarl, as opposed to the opposing Incineroar, which has Flare Blitz, Knock Off, Fake Out, and U-Turn. So one has a pivoting option, one has the option to lower special attack. I don't think Snarl will be super useful here. Potentially, maybe you could lower the special attack of Farigiraf or Pelipper, but... and that could come up too. The Pelipper, given that these Incineroar are Assault Vest, probably won't knock out Incineroar with a single hit. So, right now the players are deciding which Pokemon they're going to bring. Looks like we're going real fast here. Ben here trying to decide their Pokemon here at the last minute. Looks like they're still thinking, but yep, they've ended up locking in. So we've got an excellent match here to start off with round 1 at the Collector Store League Challenge in St. Peters, Missouri. Again, my name is Leonard Craft, and I'll be your commentator for this morning's competition. So I'm excited to get into round 1. So game 1, it looks like we've got Calyrex-Ice Rider and Amoonguss against Regieleki and Iron Bundle. Now this Iron Bundle does have the booster energy. I imagine it's going to be a speed booster Iron Bundle. It'd be quite surprising to see special attack boosting. And Iron Bundle here is probably very inclined to want to go for Taunt. You see that speed booster. Taunt would prevent the Amoonguss from going for either a Spore or Catch on Rage Powder. The Calyrex-Ice Rider does not have Protect, so the Amoonguss is probably very inclined to try to protect the Calyrex-Ice Rider from a Taunt. I imagine a Taunt going into that to stop a Trick Room would be pretty devastating, although potentially Amoonguss could use Spore to trade that off. The Regieleki is kind of in an awkward spot. It doesn't have a whole lot I can do here. Perhaps set up a screen. We'll see what it goes for. Iron Bundle does offer the Taunt. The Taunt will prevent the Amoonguss from going for status moves in the future, and Regieleki does just have a Reflect. Regieleki is holding the Light Clay item, so that Reflect will last 8 turns, which will greatly reduce the impact this Calyrex-Ice Rider has in these first initial turns. Now, this Calyrex-Ice Rider, in exchange for not using the move Protect, does have access to the move Seed Bomb. Now, Seed Bomb will be helpful in dealing damage to this Iron Bundle, which otherwise wouldn't take very much damage from Glacial Lance or High Horsepower. Iron Bundle does have a lot of defense, so it's going to be able to take those attacks pretty well, I'd imagine. Calyrex is probably inclined to want to throw an attack at Regieleki. Regieleki does not have Protect, so a High Horsepower plus an attack from Amoonguss may get it. I'd be surprised, given that this Regieleki is dual screens. It's probably a little bit bulkier. It probably can survive a High Horsepower with no trouble. Pollen Puff follow-up, maybe that would be enough, not sure. That is Amoonguss' only attacking move. It doesn't have access to anything else, and Amoonguss decides to switch out, not wanting to deal with the taunt, reset that for later. Incineroar comes in. It's unlikely that a Hydro Pump was aimed that way, so pretty safe play overall. Potentially an Ice-type attack could be coming there, and it would absolutely love to take that. A High Horsepower comes out into Regieleki, and it does manage to survive. Thunder Cage comes out, and it hits the Incineroar. That will trap Incineroar on the field, and also deal some chip damage over time. The Iron Rebel does go for the Hydro Pump, though, predicting that the Amoonguss was going to switch out, and gets a nice knockout at Incineroar. So that's a huge play, but yeah, the Regieleki is very low now. It's easy to pick it off with a Glacial Lance, but this Amoonguss does get to come back in. So a nice play to predict the switch out there from Amoonguss. The Amoonguss is now under pressure. Now it's pressuring the Iron Bundle with a Spore. A Spore and Glacial Lance is pretty safe. Altaria certainly doesn't want to come in on a Glacial Lance, and although Zacian could, it would be kind of Spore bait next turn. So that was a really nice prediction, but I wonder if the momentum is now back in Billy's favor. We'll just have to see how well Billy can execute these turns of Trick Room. Looks like Iron Bundle's just going to go for the Protect. Doesn't want to mess around with getting Spored. And we do see the Spore aimed that way, preventing the Iron Bundle from moving. I imagine this is just going to be a Glacial Lance to finish off the Regieleki. Yep. Regieleki, it was bulky enough to survive that High Horsepower earlier, but with only 20 HP, Glacial Lance is certainly going to take a knockout here. Regieleki is going down for sure. And that will give Calyrex-Ice Rider an attack boost. That'll help offset the damage reduction that was provided by the Regieleki with setting up Reflect earlier. Now you have a tricky situation, though. Like, oh, the Zacian doesn't even have a Behemoth Blade either. So it's not really threatening a whole lot of damage on Calyrex-Ice Rider, even if it could get off an attack. And with Amoonguss there to support it with Spore, that'd be kind of difficult. The Calyrex-Ice Rider is the Terra Fire, but it has no motivation to go for it right now. So looks like Altaria is coming out. I would imagine this Altaria is very inclined to go for a Terastallization. It is the Terra Steel on Altaria. That would let it take the Glacial Lance a whole heck of a lot better. However, Altaria also doesn't have any protection from Spore. So if Amoonguss here just throws a Spore into Altaria, which doesn't carry Protect, then Glacial Lance from Calyrex-Ice comes out. Although it will do very low damage to the Steel-type Altaria and the Water and Ice-type Iron Bundle through Reflect. Nevertheless, the Iron Bundle's biggest punish is probably a Taunt. It's not really going to be doing that much damage to this Calyrex-Ice. So this Trick Room is still applying a lot of pressure. Dealing with both the combination of Spore and Glacial Lance is, I think, providing some difficulty here for Ben. We'll see if the Terastallization can help first, though. The Terra Steel will turn off the weakness to Glacial Lance, and I imagine the Glacial Lance is coming through. It'd be kind of a ballsy play to click High Horsepower in that situation. We do just see the Spore launched into the Altaria, though. Let's see if this is a follow-up Glacial Lance, or if this is a more mid-ground play, potentially a Seed Bomb. Yep, we do see Seed Bomb. Seed Bomb does do over 90% to the Iron Bundle. Wow. I guess that attack boost really is helping out. I expected that to do less. The reason why that's so impactful is because I imagine it's in KO range of Glacial Lance now. It's definitely in KO range of Pollen Puff. So now Iron Bundle is in a kind of a tricky situation. Yeah, it's got to protect itself. If Glacial Lance comes out and picks up another knockout, that could be devastating. Amoonguss here did take a lot of damage from Freeze Dry, but it does still have the option to Spore or Rage Powder. Rage Powder could be still useful to redirect away a potential Will-O-Wisp. That would cover if Altaria woke up on the first turn. But this is looking still pretty good for Billy, I'd say. Even if you make a pretty straightforward move of just going for Pollen Puff and the Iron Bundle to try and knock it out, and this high horsepower into the Altaria to deal some damage. I imagine this will still be pretty effective. The Altaria is holding the Citrus Berry item, which would ordinarily let it recover a lot of health, but thanks to Calyrex-Ice's As-One ability, having a nervous part of that, it's going to prevent that from actually happening. We actually see the last Pokemon for Billy being that Farigiraf, so there was a Protect from the Iron Bundle. Let's see if that was predicted. We do see a high horsepower into the Altaria, so nice play. That's going to do a lot of damage to Altaria, and Altaria does not get the first turn wake to be able to get the Will-O-Wisp off. So now, although Trick Room is over, it's not clear to me how you can... well, I guess you can stop another Trick Room from going up. Taunt into either of these Pokemon would stop it, but what stops the Glacial Lance? That's what I'm worried about. The Glacial Lance, again, both these Pokemon do resist it, but if Glacial Lance comes out, I imagine both will probably faint with the +1 attack boost that's already been given how low these Pokemon are. Potentially, if the Altaria does get that Wake Up and go for Will-O-Wisp with the Calyrex-Ice, it might survive, but still, this is going to be pretty tough. Not only that, but the Amoonguss is still fairly healthy in the back. It's looking pretty tough. Taunt does come out into the Farigiraf, which also could just attack as well. It does have attacking moves. Altaria does wake up, though. Let's see if it lands the Will-O-Wisp. It does, so potentially that could be the difference maker if Glacial Lance picks a knockout, but you could also just go for a regular attack, too. Glacial Lance might be a bit greedy. We'll see what happens. Just a Hyper Voice from Farigiraf, so that's going to pick up the Iron Bundle for sure. The Altaria is left very low. With the Throat Spray item on Farigiraf, it'll get an extra special attack boost. And now another Hyper Voice will for sure pick up that remaining bit of HP on Altaria. And we see the Calyrex just go for the Glacial Lance. So just 2 attacks, not wanting to mess around with Taunt. Didn't know which one the Taunt was going to go into, so I'll just attack with both. So, although Farigiraf was taunted, the only thing that came in exchange was a Will-O-Wisp onto the Calyrex. And the Calyrex is already at 2 stages of increased attack, so I don't know if that's going to be enough. The Zacian does come out, but I don't see how Zacian is going to be able to break this Calyrex Farigiraf Amoonguss very quickly. Play Rough is not going to do very much damage to either of these Pokemon, or minimally, I don't think it should knock it out. After a Swords Dance, it probably would pick up the KO, but do you have time to go for a Swords Dance? I don't know. The Farigiraf can't do a whole lot to the Zacian. It does know both Hyper Voice and Psyshock, which are going to be resisted hits into the Zacian. It looks like we do see that Swords Dance, so trying to get set up, realizes that there's not really going to be a way to break through these Pokemon quickly enough unless a Swords Dance goes off. We do see a double attack, though. Let's see if that's enough to survive. It is. So Zacian did survive the turn, but now what? Even if you get a knockout here, I think that the other Pokemon's attack should just get the job done. Hyper Voice should pick up from here. Probably Glacial Lance should pick up from here, so you don't even have to risk a high horsepower and miss. And Play Rough doesn't even get the knockout on Calyrex, so yep, this game is super over. We're going to be seeing Hyper Voice pick up the final knockout there on Zacian. And Billy takes the first game with his Calyrex-Ice Rider and taking advantage of Trick Room. So I think the biggest issue there from Ben, for sure, was Trick Room going up. When Trick Room went up there, it meant that the Calyrex-Ice Rider Amoonguss combination was just so threatening. With the combination of Spore and Glacial Lance, although he did Terrestrialize his Pokemon well to resist that Glacial Lance, the coverage moves that Billy's Calyrex had were actually very useful. The Seed Bomb there actually was very, very useful. The Iron Bundle probably would have been very difficult to knock out otherwise, perhaps relying more on Farigiraf's damage later on. It looks like we see an adjustment here. I like this adjustment of leading with Incineroar. That would cover the immediate turn that we saw last time with the Calyrex-Ice Rider and Amoonguss lead. A Taunt plus Fake Out play would stop the Amoonguss from using Rage Powder, get a Taunt off onto the Calyrex-Ice, and then Calyrex-Ice can no longer set Trick Room, and you're threatening Taunt next turn onto the Iron Bundle. You're still not threatening a whole lot of damage. However, you can do a interesting pin against the Calyrex-Ice Rider, because Iron Bundle does have Hydro Pump. It can threaten with the Calyrex-Ice Rider if it terrestrializes. So if a terrestrialization is threatened, then potentially that could be an angle that Billy could use to get around this. However, The downside with leading this and going for that fake out taunt play is that you could potentially just lose your Iron Bundle turn 1 straight away to a C-Bomb. I think last time when we saw that interaction with C-Bomb into Iron Bundle, I believe it was with Reflect and Calyrex-Ice having a +1 attack boost. So I don't think it's necessarily guaranteed that C-Bomb will just straight up pick up the knockout on Iron Bundle, but we'll have to see. Let's see how both players adjust. We just see the Calyrex-Ice Rider and Amoonguss from Billy, and the Iron Bundle and Incineroar from Ben. So we'll see if that game plan switch up will work out in Ben's favor. Of course, the Intimidate not working against the Calyrex-Ice Rider thanks to its clear Amulet item, a very strong item, and of course Iron Bundle's Booster Energy will boost its speed. Not really relevant here, but it could be relevant in other matchups. Of course, Iron Bundle loves to have its speed boost. So we'll see here. From Billy's perspective, I think the fake out taunt is fairly telegraphed, so you can get an attack off here. The question is that worth it? Do you want to make that sort of trade? Like, is that trade like what you're aiming to go for here? Like, are you fine with taking a trade where you just attack and take the taunt, or would you rather instead perhaps switch out into your Incineroar and protect the Amoonguss? Then next turn you go for maybe a fake out Spore play. But that's kind of tricky with the Terra Ghost on the Iron Bundle, which it looks like is locked in. Locking in Terra Ghost is kind of risky. It will mean you get around the C-Bomb on this turn, but I wonder if that just opens you up to a Glacial Lance on the follow-up turn. We'll have to see how this works out. The Terra Ghost on Iron Bundle, not again going to be immediately impactful on this turn. Actually, we do see a Terrestrialization. What's coming out? It's either going to be the Fire type on Calyrex-Ice Rider, and it is a Fire type on Calyrex-Ice Rider. So next turn it will be weak to that Hydro Pump. So this could go potentially real badly. Maybe not. Fake out into Amoonguss and taunt into Calyrex-Ice Rider, which means that Amoonguss can still Rage Powder on the following turn. So, yep, we do see the taunt coming out into the Calyrex-Ice. Let's see what Cali-Ice decides to go for. It is just the C-Bomb. So, correctly predicting that the attack would come through there. Again, though, what stops the Glacial Lance the next turn? If you protect Iron Bundle and now your Incineroar, like, does what? Like, Flare Blitzes the Amoonguss. Maybe that'll knock it out. Maybe it won't. If you double target into the Amoonguss as it goes to Rage Powder, then Glacial Lance probably still picks up the KO in Iron Bundle. So, this is going to be tricky. The positioning that Ben here is going to matter a lot. Making sure that if Amoonguss goes down, Farigiraf doesn't just come in and set Trick Room anyway, is going to be really important. So we see Ben here really thinking about what to do this turn. It looks like they're just thinking about just going for a double target into the Amoonguss. Amoonguss did not protect last turn, so it does have the option to protect on this turn, but I imagine it probably wants the Rage Powder to cover for an attack landing in that slot. Actually, we just see a switch out of Calyrex-Ice Rider into the Urshifu. Okay, so Urshifu, a change-up from last game. Not going to be especially impactful right now, as this Amoonguss is going to just be felled in 2 attacks. So, no punish with the Glacial Lance, deciding that instead, I want to get my Urshifu on the board. I want to get my Calyrex-Ice on the board potentially together. Maybe there's a Pelipper in the back. I'm not sure. The Urshifu here is under a lot of pressure, though. I'm imagining that a Freeze Dry should pick it up in one hit. Iron Bundle's Freeze Dry is super effective on the opposing Water-type Urshifu. And given that Iron Bundle is currently faster than Urshifu, that means that it will be able to just pick up a one-shot with Freeze Dry. I wonder if this is a bait then, maybe. With Incineroar coming back in, you can't fake out the Iron Bundle, so if Freeze Dry just goes off into Urshifu, then that's going to be a lot of damage into Urshifu. I don't know my Iron Bundle calcs off the top of my head, so maybe it get it. Maybe it won't, but even if it doesn't, I feel like that's such important damage. Potentially this is a bait. Maybe you switch out your Urshifu, go back into the Calyrex-Ice Rider in order to take this hit. Nope, that's not what's happening at all. I was thinking maybe it would be able to take that attack being a Fire type now a little bit better, but nope, that's not what happens. Instead, we just see the Freeze Dry into the Urshifu. Is that going to be enough to pick up a knockout? It is. So that's a 1-hit KO on the Urshifu. A really critical change here. The Incineroar here probably has to pick up a knockout on Iron Bundle as a punish, and it does get it. I was a bit concerned there, maybe without the booster energy, not having an item. Maybe knockoff wouldn't do enough, but yeah, it's still super effective. So that was enough to pick up the KO there. So now this Calyrex-Ice Rider is kind of a sitting duck. It can be double targeted with a fake out and an attack. Regieleki isn't exactly what you'd want here for a double target. Thunder Cage can miss, and also it won't do a lot of damage to the Calyrex-Ice. But still, it's a pretty free fake out plus an attack. Incineroar is likely not going to be able to KO the Regieleki in one hit, especially with this Intimidate coming out. So this Calyrex-Ice is going to be taking a lot of damage. It probably will eventually get Trick Room up, but at what cost? That's basically what we'll have to find out here. It looks like deciding, no, I don't want the immediate damage right now. I'm going to set up Reflect and win the damage trades in the long run. So we'll see how Billy responds with this. Incineroar and Calyrex-Ice are both still very healthy, but once I think this Calyrex-Ice Rider is in KO range of one of Zacian-Crowned's attacks, I think it's going to be devastatingly difficult to come back in this game. A knockoff into Regieleki will remove its Light Clay, but it won't remove the 8 turns duration. That was already set when Regieleki used Reflect, so that knockoff is just dealing some damage without dealing recoil back. Makes sense. A Thunder Cage does come out into the Calyrex, does a decent chunk. Let's see what this follow-up attack is from the 2 Incineroar. Incineroar on Ben's side is going first there, using knockoff, removing the Clear Amulet. Flare Blitz and return into the Regieleki won't pick up the knockout, dealing a little bit of chip damage back to itself. I imagine this is a Trick Room coming out from the Calyrex. Yep. So, several turns into the game, Billy does have Trick Room up with the Calyrex Ice Rider, but look at that. Taking a little bit of chip damage from Thunder Cage too. Probably the only chip damage it's going to get out of this turn. I imagine that the Calyrex is probably going to pick up a knockout here on the Regieleki, or maybe it'll try to go for one onto the Zacian. Potentially you could go for a high horsepower into the Incineroar. That would also cover Zacian switching in there. I think it's unlikely that Zacian is coming in for the Regieleki slot, and Billy should probably expect the last Pokemon is Zacian. This is a restricted format, so you typically want to bring your restricted Pokemon. But it is just Glacial Lance, so taking the easy knockout there on Regieleki. Incineroar now will have an opportunity to respond. If it had Parting Shot, well, not Parting Shot because it's an Assault Vest, but if it had U-Turn, it could use U-Turn into Calyrex, then kind of get an easy win here with a Fake Out plus another attack into it. But that's not what we've got here. Instead, we've just got Incineroar Flare Blitzing into the opposing Incineroar. Knockoff shouldn't pick up there. Oh, it does! Oh, that's a huge critical hit. I'm not sure if that would have gotten it without the critical hit. That makes the game a whole heck of a lot easier for Ben to wrap up. If that hadn't KO'd, then basically we'd be... It'd probably be a matter of, does Zacian protect or not, as Calyrex, like, where does Calyrex aim its high horsepower, sort of thing. But now this should be over for sure. With Reflect up, the Incineroar being intimidated, Incineroar would have to get a critical hit, Flare Blitz, in order to pick this one up. And yeah, I like this play, just protecting the Zacian. We've already seen the interaction between these 2 Incineroar. Ben's Incineroar is faster than Billy's Incineroar. So you can see here in Trick Room that Billy's is moving first, and that's been pretty consistent. Just a knockoff here into the Incineroar. Really nice. Just get a little bit more damage on it. If Flare Blitz does land a critical hit into Zacian, it'll take a whole bunch of recoil damage, and Incineroar will probably win the 1v1 versus the opposing Incineroar. So even in the worst case scenario, if this Flare Blitz lands a critical hit, I think there's still a good shot for Ben to win this one here. And there is no critical hit. A burn here would not be enough. The Incineroar is way too low. I imagine Close Combat would pick it up from here. And Close Combat will definitely do it without the burn. So Incineroar is KO'd, and we now have a Game 3. So really nice adjustments there from Ben. I think the his game plan of prevent Trick Room and then do damage trades out of Trick Room was really effective. Although Billy was eventually able to get up Trick Room, the downside of Trick Room going up so late was that the Calyrex-Ice Incineroar combination just didn't have enough juice to make it through. So we'll see how Ben decides to adjust. There are a couple things that he can do. But there's not really an obvious way to get around that turn 1. The Fake Out, like the immunity to Fake Out means that you can't leave with Incineroar to get Trick Room up. And you don't have Protect on your Trick Room setter, so you can't do something like Protect, and then next turn go for Rage Powder and Trick Room. So it looks like Ben's like, yeah, that was a good idea last time. I'm going to go with the same thing this time. Altaria was cool. I think Altaria could do something in this battle, but it would have to terrestrialize, I think, every single time. And the Calyrex-Ice on Billy's side is that Terrafire, so it's always going to be tricky to land that Will-O-Wisp on it. It's possible, but it's going to be tricky, so I like these Pokemon. Potentially you could bring Rillaboom instead of Incineroar, but I think it's just going to invite a Glacial Lance on turn 1, and you really don't want that. So the Iron Bundle Incineroar lead, I think, is probably immune to being O-Code by the Calyrex-Ice Rider, so I like this strategy. And Urshifu isn't really a great adjustment up front either, because Urshifu doesn't outspeed the Iron Bundle, and as we saw from that second game there, just gets one-shot by Freeze Dry. So the Urshifu there in the back, not really doing too much for Billy. I wonder if Farigiraf will come again in Game 3. Farigiraf's utility and potentially setting up another Trick Room could be useful. We'll see what happens, though. So Billy starts off actually, completely switching up his lead. No Calyrex-Ice Rider or Amoonguss anymore. Instead, we see an Incineroar and Farigiraf. So that will stop the fake out into either of these Pokemon. However, you can't stop the Iron Bundle from going for Taunt still. I don't think this gets around the turn 1 Taunt. So potentially, Billy's strategy could be instead, I'm going to bait you into using the Terra Ghost. I really want you to go for that Terra Ghost. I'm now going to punish you with a knockoff and an attack with Farigiraf into the Iron Bundle. Just take a knockout. If I take out this Iron Bundle really early, then perhaps you can say, oh, I'm just going to be able to win with my superior positioning later. The Incineroar does have U-turn, so it will be able to pivot out and back in. I imagine it won't be very difficult to get either a Fake Out Trick Room, or if the Amoonguss is in the back, a Rage Powder Trick Room. So it just kind of all depends on what happens here. Farigiraf also is under pressure of both a knockoff and a snarl. Both of those moves would be impactful into it. And we do see a switch out. So what's coming in? Amoonguss. So that's going to take a taunt. Not going to like that too much. But it will deal a little bit of damage back to Incineroar thanks to its Rocky Helmet item. And let's see here if the Incineroar can get this punish that it's looking for, I think, onto the Iron Bundle with a Dark type attack. If it can get the knockoff into it, if 2 knockoffs will pick up the Iron Bundle even after Intimidate, I think Billy will have a pretty good board, but we'll see what ends up happening. Incineroar knockoff into the Amoonguss will again remove that Rocky Helmet, dealing a little bit of damage before finally removing that held item. The knockoff from Incineroar will now land into the Iron Bundle, and yeah, doing over 50% is pretty big there. I would be surprised if a Hydro Pump and knockoff knocked out the Incineroar. Again, the opposing Incineroar here is holding that Assault Vest item as well. So Incineroar should be able to survive that attack and probably respond with a knockoff. So let's see if Ben can read into that. Ben does have options to get around that play, potentially protecting Iron Bundle, bringing in another Pokemon to take advantage of the passive turn. If the Amoonguss stays on the board, then it's really not going to be doing very much. The most impactful thing it could probably do is Pollen Puff the Incineroar if it goes low. So Amoonguss is inclined to switch out, and Billy has really shown in games 1 and 2 that he's inclined to take advantage of that regenerator. So it looks like Iron Bundle is switching out, so it's going to lose that speed booster energy, but not impactful. The speed boost isn't especially important here against the Trick Room team from Billy. The only thing it could potentially matter versus is if Urshifu-Rapid-Strike is here, and it's not. We see Farigiraf coming back in. It's almost certainly that Calyrex-Ice Rider in the back. Flare Blitz comes out into the Farigiraf, dealing low damage. Let's see what the Incineroar opts for. Probably a U-turn if I had to guess in this situation. Nope, just a Flare Blitz. Wanting to try to secure that KO onto the Iron Bundle. Doesn't get it, but does get a lot of damage on Regieleki. And now we're kind of in a tricky spot. It's this kind of like game 1. How do you stop that Trick Room from going up? A Thunder Cage and knockoff? I just don't see that knocking out the Farigiraf. We saw that was a Flare Blitz, I believe, into the Farigiraf, so knockoff would do a little bit more damage. So maybe if you predict the Terra Fairy from Farigiraf, maybe, just maybe, there will be enough damage with both the Thunder Cage and Flare Blitz to pick it up, but I don't know, it's going to be close. And we do see a Terastallization on the Farigiraf, so wanting to avoid the super effective damage from that knockoff, turning it into resisted damage with that Terra Fairy. Let's see if this is going to be enough. It's all going to come down to this. Can Farigiraf survive this combination attack? Thunder Cage does come out into Farigiraf. How much is it going to take? Ooh, I think that's enough. I think Flare Blitz is going to get it. I think there's just going to be enough. Oh, let's see. Does it get it? Does it get it? Does it get it? It does get it. So Terastallization wasted, getting no value out of that. However, it may not be so bad after all. If Incineroar did go for the U-turn here, you could potentially set up for a U-turn plus Trick Room play. But no, there's just a Flare Blitz. If U-turn came out, potentially you could switch Incineroar out. Calyrex-Ice could come in. And then you can go for a fake-out Trick Room. Maybe that would let you get it back up. But now, although Regieleki has been felled, again, like, with the Terastallization spent now on Billy's side, there's no defensive Terastallization available for the Calyrex-Ice Rider. Again, though, will it survive a combination attack of Hydro Pump and -1 Flare Blitz? Probably. Ben's still not out of this yet. If Iron Bundle comes out and has to taunt into the use Taunt into the Calyrex-Ice to prevent that from getting up Trick Room, will that be too much ground loss? Because Iron Bundle will certainly faint in that turn, or very likely at least. We'll see what happens though. Iron Bundle does come out, and is that Calyrex, so no active fake out here, and no potential for protecting Calyrex and switching an Amoonguss to help set up Trick Room either. So this Calyrex kind of has to do it on its own. It looks like Taunt is being hovered. That's going to prevent the Trick Room from going up from Calyrex. So we'll have to see here. Does Billy expect the Taunt into the Calyrex? Because there also is threat of just Hydro Pump into the Incineroar. Just take a knockout there. Although potentially you could cover that by switching into a Amoonguss. I'll have to see what happens though. Looks like Taunt does come out into the Calyrex-Ice Rider. It's now going to take a whole bunch of damage from Flare Blitz, too. Again, this is an Intimidated Flare Blitz. This Intimidate has been on the board since turn 1, and that is helping it a lot. That Calyrex-Ice Rider is now taking less than 50% damage. Looks like Flare Blitz is going to come out into the Iron Bundle. Pick a KO there, so that implies to me that there's not a Glacial Lance incoming. If you were wanting that Glacial Lance to get an attack boost off of attacking the Iron Bundle, you probably would wait for that. Let's see if this is a high horsepower then. A high horsepower into Incineroar could be devastating. And there is high horsepower. That will pick up Incineroar from that range. And although Trick Room has been prevented, it looks like there's not going to be enough here, I think, in order to turn this one around for Ben. Again, the Zacian, without Behemoth Blade, is just not able to threaten a KO here onto this Calyrex-Ice Rider. Although you can probably get a knockout Incineroar with even just Play Rough. I imagine Play Rough will do it. If Play Rough doesn't get the Calyrex, then I don't see how you win. But it doesn't really matter either. Even if this does knock out the Calyrex, Amoonguss would just be able to come out and Rage Powder away attacks forever, while the other attacker just goes for high damaging moves. And yeah, that Flare Blitz into Zacian just does heaps of damage. A high horsepower does miss, so Ben hasn't lost this game yet, but now you can just use a Glacial Lance and a Flare Blitz, and it does not matter which Pokemon the Zacian KOs, because the other will be able to pick it up in the end. So, looks like this time Billy, although Ben did a great job of denying that Trick Room, looks like Billy's bulky Trick Room Pokemon were still in the end able to make these damage trades. And so Ben will be proceeding on in this League Challenge to 1-0. A very nice start to Billy's day. Pretty nice plays there. So yeah, congrats to Billy there on the round 1 victory. Of course, round 1 is just round 1. Doesn't mean you're out of the tournament yet. So we'll have to see how this tournament continues to shake up.